Hey everybody, my name is Chris and welcome to the Office Field Guide. I'm reviewing every episode of The Office and today we are looking at Season 3, Episode 17, entitled Cocktails. The setup for this episode is that several Scranton employees are invited to an event at David Wallace's home, an event in which Michael and Jan make their relationship public. Cocktails was written by Paul Lieberstein and directed by J.J. Abrams, and we're gonna have to get to that in a minute. Cocktails aired on February 22nd, 2007, was viewed by 8.3 million people, and currently has an 8.5 out of 10 on IMDb. And your Cocktails trivia is, what is the name of the song that's playing in Poor Richards when Pam tells Roy about the kiss? And you might be asking, Chris, are you just asking that as a trivia question so you don't have to play that song to avoid copyright infringement? Of course I am, but I still want to know how many people actually know what song it is. Anyway, be the first to put the right answer in the comments, and you'll get a shout out in next week's video. And while we're talking about shout outs, don't forget to look for the Prison Mike or the Floating Andy somewhere in this video. First person to put the timestamp in will get a shout out next week. Congrats to these winners, and with that, let's get this one all mixed up.
No one asked you anything ever?
Initial criticisms of this episode were more than positive. But if I'm being honest, I've always looked at this one as a filler episode. But there are no filler episodes of the Office Field Guide, so I've dug in deep to try to get out the best callouts from this episode. As promised, we need to talk about J.J. Abrams. If you're not sure who he is, Abrams is an extremely talented writer, producer, and director who's had his hands in tons of stuff that I've loved over the last 20 years, as well as some of the things that Dwight loves.
Remember on Lost, when they met the others?
Have you ever seen a stripper before?
Yes. Jennifer Garner portrayed one on Alias. It was one of her many aliases.
Yeah, me neither.
Look, Dwight is a wuss. When we rented Armageddon,
No.
he cried at the end of it.
Michael,
We did.
I told you. That was because it was New Year's Eve and it started to snow at exactly midnight.
Bruce Willis, they're gonna leave him on the asteroid.
Okay, I'll punch you.
And man, Lost. That's the stuff of legends for me. I haven't tried to rewatch that series in what has to be like 8 years now, so I'm not exactly sure how it holds up, but Lost was an experience when it was on the air. Everybody everywhere was talking about Lost. And who do you think the others are? And Abrams was behind that entire series. But this is the only episode of The Office that Abrams had anything to do with. And it had been rumored for over a year that he'd work with the show in some way, shape, or form. And with Business Schooled last week with Joss Whedon, and this week with J.J. Abrams, they were brought in due to, you guessed it, another round of sweeps. Alright, and now what I've gotten completely accustomed to, filler episodes are great opportunities for lots of callbacks. First we have the return of this guy.
So the merger goes smoothly, or?
It did, like butter. Mike Myers, SNL.
I love this guy. He's such a corporate archetype. It's continuity like this that does help the series feel real. But to directly and immediately contradict myself, this is a totally different house from what we saw Michael and Dwight at earlier in Season 3.
Okay.
All right.
But this might not be an error. It is possible that in the branch closing episode, they were at the wrong house the entire time. I mean, it's very possible that Dwight's sending Christmas cards to the wrong address. There's a great callback to Sandals Beach.
Okay, let's just go to a motel and just, like, rip into each other like we did on that black sand beach in Jamaica.
Okay, Jan.
And while we're on this, what's Michael's ringtone?
Wait, should you be going? Hello, you.
I've heard it's My Humps, but I don't know. Tell me in the comments what you think it is. And I don't know how Michael ever came up with the idea of ketchup fights.
Jan, I want the picket fence. I want the ketchup fights and the tickling.
But it does make an appearance in Threat Level Midnight. Okay, and in a bizarre connection, BJ Novak's father actually ghostwrote Lee Iacocca's autobiography.
From Lee Iacocca. 20-year-old single malt scotch.
Here is to Mr. Iacocca and his failed experiment, the DeLorean.
You'll learn something new every day. And after being mentioned previously 4 different times in Season 2, this is the first time we actually see Poor Richard's bar. Poor Richard's is a bar in Scranton, PA, which is attached to a bowling alley. This bar is actually called Pickwick's Pub, and it's in LA on Ventura Boulevard. And there's also some callbacks to season 2's Bring Your Daughter to Work Day episode with invoking Toby's daughter.
Hey, don't you have a daughter?
And Stanley's daughter in a deleted scene.
I missed you.
I miss you too.
Don't you remember me?
Not again. Melissa!
Daddy!
Wait for me outside. God. She is 16.
Interestingly enough, I was corrected in that episode. This kid is not actually Greg Daniels' kid. They share the same last name, and there are just a lot of bad sources of information out there.
Wikipedia is the best thing ever.
So that's my bad, and I might find out that this is wrong later, but this kid actually is Greg Daniels' kid. He's all grown up now and was in Upload and Space Force, 2 of Greg Daniels' shows. And there is a future callback to this episode much later in the series.
Hey, who makes this chair?
I don't know. It was here when I was born.
I want one. It's really good, solid construction. It's comfortable.
Nostalgia is truly one of the great human weaknesses, second only to the neck.
And let me say that this might be the most underrated moment of all of season 3.
Hey, Kenny. Sorry about the jet skis.
You guys want a round? On me? Yeah? Let's get you a drink.
I don't know the backstory here, but when Kenny shuts down, you could see the pain on his face. Kenny's portrayed by Michael Patrick McGill, who seems like he's been typecast as a cop or a prison guard, but man, does he have a lot of credits to his name. Good job, Kenny, but it's a bummer we don't get to see you for quite a while. And I've held off talking about relationships as long as I can, so we're gonna get into that in the deeper meaning.
Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5?
I'm gonna say that the deeper meaning of this episode has everything to do with inspecting ourselves to see where we are with our life goals. So stick with me. When we look at Michael and Jan, it's like a corkscrew to the heart.
Downside, I date Michael Scott publicly and collapse in on myself like a dying star.
Every second of it. And it's not just Michael, I feel for Jan too.
I think they both could do better.
It's pretty easy to look at their relationship and think that they're doomed. And I would agree 100%. But when we look at Pam and Roy, with Pam's newfound confidence, they're experiencing some highlights.
I'm not here.
Oh, yes!
But as soon as Roy says this,
You can't get anything from me.
well, it seems like this isn't headed for a good place. And that brings us to Jim and Karen. They seem like they're on top of the world. Karen is innocently enough joking about her past.
What the hell? Have you dated like every guy here?
Which I'm certain that Jim is thinking about the fact that he's not with someone from his past. On the surface, everything is going really well for him. Karen's great, the CFO wants to hang out with him, and corporate speak means that he's getting groomed for potential growth in the company. I used to be bugged at how much actually doesn't happen here, but I think there's some realism in the writing. This is the type of exchange that really happens. Anyway, these 3 relationships have varying levels of doomedness. Is that a word? I'm gonna make it a word. So what's the key to unlocking the deeper meaning? When I did the callouts earlier, I did mention that Bring Your Daughter to Work Day was a callback. The deeper meaning of that episode was all about living the life that you want to reach the dreams that line up with your priorities.
Little kid lover. That way people will know exactly where my priorities are at.
This discussion with Jan then is a callback to what Michael really wants.
It was handing
I
it
want
to
the
him in the
house,
first place.
Jan. I want the picket fence. I want the catch-up fights.
So how do we tie this all together? Well, it's Dwight. It's always Dwight. Dwight's arc in this episode is bizarre, even for him. He's just randomly inspecting David Wallace's house. Maybe this is a Schrute tradition at cocktail parties, but I think the inspection motif is the bow that ties us all together. These 3 relationships in their varying stages are existing simply because they're not being inspected too closely. Most easily seen with Michael and Jan, so I won't even mess with that one. Pam and Roy.
Yeah, you're right. This is so over.
Well, that didn't take long. But Jim and Karen, spoiler warning if you haven't watched all of season 3, meet me back up at this timestamp if you don't want anything spoiled. Jim's getting everything he wants. The successful girl, the relationship, groomed for promotion. But as we know, once he inspects himself and his priorities, it's Pam.
Sorry. Are you free for dinner tonight?
Yes.
All right. Then it's a date.
And life, or better said, the writers, keep throwing distractions his way. Karen? Nope. Corporate job? Nope. Kathy? Nope. Athlete? Nope. No matter what life throws his way, it's always Pam.
Not enough for me. You are everything.
Okay, and I told the people who didn't want spoilers to come back in about 10 seconds, so we'll have to mess with them a little bit. And really, that's why I think Dwight might actually be an alien. So the message here is to always inspect your life to make sure that you're on track with your life goals. Which makes me sound like a motivational speaker, but I'm just assessing what's in the show.
Maybe 5-10 days a year, I'll get home and I will have no idea what the hell just happened.
Or I don't know, maybe this whole episode exists to connect Michael Scott to Burt Wonderstone, which is a reference I don't even get. But with that, let's dish out some Dundies.
And then I gotta get him to the Dundies.
The Protector Dundee goes to Kevin Maloney. This makes me love the character of Kevin all the more. I don't know if he'd really spring into action, but he does seem ready to take a hit to protect Pammy.
And don't call me Pammy.
I mean Pam. And the actual Magician Dundee goes to Steve Carell for this blooper.
Yeah! Yeah!
And with that, let's rate this thing.
What gives you the right?
So the cold opening, this one is so good. It brings a smile to my face every time it comes on. It gets a 4 out of 5 for me. It makes me laugh, it's energetic, it's right on point for everyone involved. It just doesn't do any actual setup for this episode, which is a bummer, but 4 out of 5 is good in that case. As for cocktails in general, I have to say, I think Abrams was wasted here. There's a couple slick camera movements and whatnot, but this is a pretty basic episode. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. This is a filler episode, directed by an incredible artist, written by a very talented writer, but somehow this one just really fails to exist on its own. Kinda like how the Power Rangers are stronger when they work together, Cocktails and the negotiation episode might have stood out more by being edited into a 1 hour long event. But it wasn't connected, and in fact there was actually a 2.5 month break in between those episodes, which does make the cliffhanger all the more impactful.
I'm gonna kill Jim Halpern.
But as it is, I give it a 3 out of 5. But that's just what I think about Cocktails. What do you think about this episode? I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments. People keep commenting things like, Chris, your videos are so great. You know, keep doing that. That's great. But I also want to hear what you think about this episode. And don't forget the trivia question in the comments, as well as the Easter egg timestamp. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week when we look at the negotiation episode.
Like having sex with Jan.
Michael.
So like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.